headlines on India development debate. The government's worst kept secret is finally out. RBI says nearly 99% of demonetized currency worth 15.44 lakh crore rupees were returned, calling the government's bluff on the note ban gains. The RBI's annual report, which is released today, also indicates that circulation of counterfeit notes in the system is much lower than expected.
Finance Minister Arun Jaitley defends the note ban despite RBI's startling revelation, says confiscation of cash was never the objective of demonetization, asserts the note ban will help expand the formal economy and the tax base.
The RBI's revelations on the note ban kick off a fresh political fight. Main opposition party Congress hits out at the Modi government for announcing the note ban with ill-conceived notions. Former Finance Minister Chidambaram tweets with a bit of sarcasm, saying that the RBI and economists should be given the Nobel Prize for proposing the note ban to cleanse the economy.
ET now also gets you exclusive details from the parliamentary panel draft report, and that's the panel in Parliament on demonetization. The report says note ban shrank the country's economy by 1% even as it failed to bring in any tangible results. It also asserts unemployment rose in the informal sector, the rural economy was disrupted, and digitalization has been coerced down the throats of Indians in a haste.
But India Inc. throws its weight behind demonetization. Addressing the Economic Times roundtable, ace banker Uday Kotak says note ban should be looked through a larger prism as it could help the government in its efforts to curb black money. JP Morgan's Kalpana Morparia says without the note ban, digitization would not have taken off.
For almost 294 days, they said it was a move to clean the Indian economy. For 294 days, they said this will curb black money. For 294 days, they said this will move India to a cashless economy. For 294 days, they said this will wipe out fake currency. And for 294 days, they kept asserting that this will eliminate terror funding. 294 days, that's exactly how much time they took to count the notes that were banned in one stroke at the midnight of 8th of November last year. 294 days later, the report card is out. Of the 15.44 lakh crores that was demonetized, 15.28 lakh crores has found its way back into the system. That means only about 1% of the money demonetized did not make its way back.
That's right, there were no windfall gains. The government gained 16,000 crore rupees and spent about 21,000 crores in new currency. You and I stood in queues to claim our money that was repeatedly denied. Was this then the smartest way to cleanse the economy? And who takes the blame for this colossal failure? Is it the government or the RBI? Because I can tell you one thing, the proud tax-paying citizen of this country is not amused tonight. The honest citizen of this country that wants to rise with India is tonight seeking answers. You're with the India development debate, and we're debating the demonetization debacle this Wednesday evening.
The wait is over. The central bank has ended the surprise on its own and Modi government's biggest economic decision so far. The demonetization files are out, and believe it or not, it seems to be an exercise in vain, with almost 99% of the currency coming back to the system. The RBI in its annual report today said that 15.28 lakh crore rupees had returned to the system versus almost 15.44 lakh crore rupees that was demonetized, which essentially means no windfall gains were made from the exercise that led you to waiting in long queues outside bank ATMs. In fact, the cost of new currency outweighed the paltry profits that the RBI made. The printing, distribution of new notes, calibration of ATMs and doing away with the old notes costed the government a whopping 21,000 crore rupees. And not just that, add to this the cost of mopping up excess liquidity through open market operations that costed the RBI another 17,426 crore rupees. The devil is in the detail. According to RBI, the counterfeit of old 500 and 1000 rupees contributed to a meager 0.0013% of the total currency in circulation. But the government is looking at the silver lining. The move has led to a crackdown on black money hoarders, put money into the formal economy and also gave a huge push towards a less cash economy.
The real object of demonetization was formalization, attack on black money, less cash currency, bigger tax base, digitization, a blow to terrorism.
While the government and the opposition conspire over the impact of demonetization, it is the common man who has questions. The honest taxpayer who wants to rise with India and who wants to debate the demonetization debacle on the India development debate. Ruchi Bhatia, ET Now, New Delhi.
That's the big debate. And joining us on the show this evening, our consulting editor Maitri Busnulmat, R. Gandhi, the former deputy governor who did oversee in many ways the demonetization exercise, Madhavan Narayan, and senior editor, writer, mentor and consultant. From the political landscape, we've got Sanju Verma defending the government's decision to demonetize, and the Congress party's Salman Anis Soz joining us all the way from Srinagar. Thanks each one of you for being with us. Couldn't have asked for a better panel. We are going to put the spotlight. We are going to keep this crisp because we want to cover a lot of ground. And so at the outset, I'm going to request all our panelists to please keep their answers crisp and short so that we can get rebuttals. We can cover a lot of ground. We don't want this to be a mudslinging match. We will not all be talking at the same time. But yes, we will take the issue head on and we will give our views and counter views to that. Sanju Verma, let me begin this with you. You are here to defend demonetization despite the numbers telling us otherwise. Will you admit, and I know of you as a candid woman, will you admit today that in hindsight, demonetization was an economic blunder?
Supriya, let me first set the ball rolling by saying that today I am wearing a dual hat, not merely as a spokesperson for the BJP, but also the hat of an economist. And, I'll be candid, which is typical of me. I think the fallacy and the misinformation campaign post the RBI's report having been released is shocking to me. In fact, it's hilarious because the ground assumption for most people has been that demonetization is a success or a failure depending on the amount of currency that's come back into the system. That was never the reason why demonetization was taken. It has been a multi-pronged success on various fronts, and I will give you examples. I'll keep my answer short. Inflation, that has been at sub 4% level, though it inched up slightly last month, but both consumer and wholesale price inflation has been in the region of 2–2.5%. Core inflation, in fact, has been in the region of 3.8%. And most importantly, bond yields, which were trading at 7.4% as recently as July 2016, went to 6.15% in March 2017 before they've decided to settle in the region of 6.4 to 6.5 or thereabouts. So to say that demonetization has not been successful, I think is a fallacy. Also, don't forget, I had written a piece on this that you will see property prices coming down by anywhere between 18 to 20 or 25 odd percent, and that is good because you have 900 million square feet of inventory lying in barely 4 metros of Delhi, Hyderabad, Bengaluru and Chennai, and that's precisely what has happened as per the latest report put out by Colliers. And the point I'm trying to make is that because property prices have fallen, because the marginal cost of lending rate has come down by anywhere between 100 to 125 basis points post demonetization from 9% plus levels to barely 8% as far as most key banks go, both in the public and private sector. The retail investor, the end home loan buyer has stood to gain humongously, a point which nobody seems to be making or willfully ignoring.
Fair enough.
Don't forget
Sanju
that
Verma,
on a 1 crore loan for 20 years, a 25 basis points cut
Sanju
leads to
Verma,
a 4 lakh gain.
you made your point. Sure. Okay, Sanju Verma, you made your point. Sanju Verma, you made your point. Let me get the Congress view in here. And I'm glad you've raised specific issues because we've got a counter to every specific issue. The last point you made on real estate, well, you quoted a report. I'm quoting the economic survey, which says that the impact on real estate was temporary, briefly real estate prices came down and now they are back to pre-demonetization level. So there was no real impact on real estate. Quotes, and I'm quoting Arvind Subramaniam here. But Salman, so, the point that Sanju Verma is saying and the point that the finance minister made is, well, I don't envy Sanju Verma this evening. The finance minister says that, confiscating cash was never the objective of the government. That was never the objective of the exercise. So what if the former Attorney General Mukul Rohatgi said in the court that we expect 4 lakh crore rupees of currency to be extinguished? So what if Mr. H.R. Khan, former Deputy Governor of RBI, told ET now just a short while ago on record that this was one of the objectives? And we have Mr. R. Gandhi, former Deputy Governor of RBI, a very senior person as well. And I'm sure he will say as well, this was one of the stated objectives of this exercise. Has the government changed the goalpost?
Well, the government has been changing the goalpost from day one. First they talked about this being a surgical strike on black money and corruption. Then they went on to say that this was going to deal with counterfeit notes. Then it was going to be about terrorism, and then it was about digitalization. And now Sanju Verma is giving us a lecture on economics and inflation. One thing that we know about the Modi government and the BJP is that it is not going to take responsibility for anything, be it Gorakhpur, be it lynchings, be it anything, be it Mumbai raids, anything. I think this is a pattern for this government. Modi ji thinks that he is God's gift to India, but if in one of the tweets that you people, ET now put out, you asked a question: who's to blame? There's only one person in India who's to blame for this debacle, and that is Prime Minister Narendra Modi. I'm not sure who he consulted, because he did not consult Arun Jaitley. We know that he was not in on this thing. He did not really consult the RBI, because I cannot imagine any RBI economist worth his salt kind of saying this is good to do. These are the kinds of things that even Venezuela has not fully tried. Okay, Venezuela is a basket case. So what has Mr. Modi achieved? He has achieved the death of 100+ people. He has achieved 1.5 million job losses in the first 4 months of 2017. He has achieved a 6.1% GDP growth in the last quarter of the last fiscal year. And by the way, the economy is still not recovering fully. Okay, all this stuff about inflation. By the way, these guys are pursuing a contractionary economic policy. And again, if anybody tells you that there is a silver bullet to corruption or black money or economic development, then they don't know economics. They don't know economic development. They have not read economic history. These are not the ways you try to move this giant ship called India, this giant economy. I think Mr. Modi has done a great disservice to this country. Yes, he managed to convert it into a political win, but frankly, India has lost.
Okay, I will come to the political win in just a bit, because I think that's an issue that we have to debate between two politicians, both you and Sanju Verma. But I'm not going to allow this to become a political slugfest. I'm going to take this straight across to Mr. R. Gandhi, who was at the RBI when demonetization did happen. And Mr. Gandhi, who is to blame? I just want to understand from you, the kind of issues that we are raising here: 100 deaths, 1% GDP erosion, unaccounted job losses. Who is to be blamed for this disaster? I'm not going to, I'm going to ring fence you here from the politicians and ask you, as a former RBI Deputy Governor, who takes the blame? Where does the buck on the demonetization debacle really stop?
Your question is not right, in the sense that you have already come to the conclusion it is a debacle, it is a failure and other thing. That is not the way to start off the discussion on demonetization, as complex an exercise as demonetization. From beginning, it was clear to us, and it has been expressed in Reserve Bank's statements also, said that this has far-reaching implications, positive impact in the medium to long term. So naturally, one has to wait for that, and the report also recognized in the short term there will be reduction in the GDP, there will be adjustment, there will be problem. That was already pre-announced when the announcement about demonetization was made. That time itself it was made clear to the world that there will be short-term pain. So now that short-term pain is actually seen, and you cannot say that it is debacle. No, it was foreseen to be this way only. and in the medium to long term there will be positive effects. So, one has to wait for the full impact of demonetization to pan out. Thereafter, one can make a judgment whether it is a debacle, it is a success, it is a failure or otherwise. So, it is too early to come to the conclusion and straight away say that just because the notes have fully have come back, so it is a debacle. I won't agree with that.
Viewers, I want to tell you, you cannot get a better panel than this on demonetization tonight on Indian television. You've got, an erudite spokesperson of the BJP, an erudite spokesperson of the Congress, a former RBI deputy governor who had a key role to play in this exercise, bringing in his perspective, and two of the finest journalists in Maithili Busnurmat and Madhavan Narayanan who are neutral and who will speak their mind. So I do want to thank my panel for joining us on India Development Debate tonight. Madhavan Narayanan, let me come to you. We are going to debate this sort of short-term gain, long-term gain, endlessly. Let's look at what has happened in the last 300 odd days since this so-called reform was kicked out. Other than the unfortunate deaths, we've seen GDP growth cut by definitely 1%. We'll know the figures tomorrow. We don't have to wait for too long. We'll get better figures tomorrow when the GDP data is out. Unaccounted for jobs, job losses, and the fiscal deficit. On the one hand, the government thought it'll get money back. Contrary to that, the dividend from the RBI is almost halved for FY17. Is the short-term benefit far outweighing any medium/long-term gains that might come through?
Let me put it in cricketing terms, since we are a nation of cricket lovers. We thought we were all watching a T20 match, and suddenly the government comes and says, hey, no, this is a test series actually, which means that we are looking at a match without a scoreboard really. If you're going to, it's like somebody went to buy apples and comes back and says, no, I actually went to harvest oranges and bananas and pears. So this analogy is probably right for whatever is going on right now. We cannot discuss qualitative facts of the long-term variety and put it against hard data that is staring us in the face. Having said that, let me also add that what Mr. Chidambaram said today of this being a disaster is maybe a far-fetched comment. I would think it's a gamble that failed or a gambit that failed, and therefore to that extent the short-term pains are such that nobody can really measure the long-term gains that they are talking about. When does this match end? When do we say, when does the old lady sing in this opera? So that's why, the fat lady, I mean. So we are looking at lots of vague claims, including Sanju Verma saying just now that property prices are down. Well, property prices have been in a slump for 3 years now. Yes, it is true that demonetization put an extra noose on the rope that was already getting tight. To that extent, you can claim victory. But, this is all a 1% cut down in a GDP growth is no joke. We have to look at that in quantitative terms alongside all the other quantitative numbers we are talking about. So all the numbers are going against what we thought was the nature of the game. So therefore, long-term issues, let me quote John Maynard Keynes, in the long run we are all dead. That's a favorite college day quote in economics. So that remains a problem for us. And as far as some of the other issues are concerned, they'll make nice spin. Terror funding. We don't know really how it is linked to terror funding. And 1 week after the demonetization, somebody even came to me and said there are intelligence imports that a shipload of counterfeit notes have been frozen on the tracks because of demonetization. Now, Bollywood might want to put that in the next sequel to Agent Vinod or something, but we have no hard data. If you look at data, if you believe in data-driven analysis, then the government is on the back foot on this. But having said that, let me add, there is no disaster. The UP elections proved that it is not a political disaster. And the current rate of economic growth, we are back to the 7% range and heading there. And there is a rebound in the economy, and therefore it's not a disaster. But yet, I can say that any intended chest-thumping speech has been preempted by data. There is no opportunity for the government to thump its chest and say, yay, we won. I don't think that's the case at all.
Indeed, I don't think there's an opportunity to chest thump, and which is why we're perhaps seeing narrative of a different kind, narrative of a shifting goalpost. But Maithili Busnurmat, let me just ask you this question, Maithili. The SBI research report said 2.5 lakh crore is what is going to be extinguished. The government in the court of law, its Attorney General, former Attorney General Mukul Rohatgi did tell the court they expect 2.5 to 3 lakh crore being extinguished. The government on various accounts said 3 to 4 lakh crore will be extinguished, and that is what the windfall gain was. That is the windfall gain that the economic survey referred to when it said there will be a windfall gain from demonetization that is going to boost India's fisc. What are the numbers? It's not 3 lakh crore, it's not 4 lakh crore, it's actually 16,000 crore. And if you compare it to the cost that the RBI has incurred in liquidity management, which is over 17,000 crore rupees, which is reprinting, which is again over 7,900 crore rupees, and of course the cost of recalibrating ATMs and all of that, it's lower in terms of cost versus the benefit analysis. So my only question to you is, where are all those claims today? There is no 3, there is no 2.5, there is no 4 lakh crore that we are talking about. We are looking at a figure of 16,000 crore rupees. Only 1% of demonetized currency did not make it back.
Well, yes, Supriya, and after having heard all my other co-panelists, I must say that I am closest to Mr. Gandhi's position, because that is a correct, factual position of a professional. The fact is that even when the government was talking about windfall gains, there were always those who knew central bank accounting who questioned whether these could be used as gains, whether these could be transferred to the government, because the transfer to the government from the Reserve Bank of India's profit and loss comes from excess of income over expenditure. Now, this does not fall into that category at all. So, there were always questions whether this could be considered a windfall gain at all. So, the fact is that whether we get 16,000 instead of that 2 lakh crores, that is completely immaterial, because there were always questions about whether it could be treated as a windfall gain. Always it was understood that there would be some short-term pain and there would be some medium to long-term gain. Yes, I would agree with Madhavan that this is a political gamble or gambit, but I would not say it has failed completely. I would say that it has succeeded partially. Yes, there are short-term gains which one cannot quantify, and with all due respect to our parliamentarians, this 1% calculation that they have come up with, I don't know how they've arrived at it, because even people who are in the business of statistics, collecting GDP data, they have not been able to quantify it. So yes, there definitely was some disruption in economic activity. GDP growth has slowed down, but whether only because of demonetization, we do not know. So that really is part of the problem with macroeconomics. There is no one-to-one relationship. So yes, there is definitely been some short-term pain, and whether the medium-term to long-term gain in terms of increase in number of taxpayers, increase in tax payments, greater digitization, whether these will compensate for the short-term gain, one doesn't know. I'm going to argue about this till the cows come home, because that is macroeconomics. There is no one-to-one relationship. So despite this, regardless of what our politician co-panelists might say, because they would like to slug it out, and people like us, we don't have a political axe to grind. The fact is, these are things which are impossible to quantify either today or tomorrow. Yes, on balance, today it does seem that the short-term pain is here and we are feeling it. The medium to long-term gain we have not yet seen. But whether which is more, which is less, it is very, very difficult to say. And I would not say that the experiment has failed or was a blunder purely because the windfall gains not materializing. That was, any case, always questionable.
I won't call it a blunder. The windfall gains was always questionable. Sanju Verma, I know you want to come in, but I want to add one question. I think now this windfall gains logic, I'm sure everyone understands, is not something worth debating about, because there's nothing to debate on it. One specific question. One of the points made by the finance minister as well was on how this would lead to improving the tax base. Now, again, and various, the Prime Minister, the Finance Minister, the CBDT and the Economic Survey have quoted various figures of how tax collections have gone up. But I think the most credible is the one put out by the Economic Survey by Arvind Subramanian, which says 5.4 lakh new users have come in post demonetization. However, the important point to note here is that the average income of those new users is 2.7 lakhs, marginally above the threshold of 2.5 lakhs, which basically means, and even the Economic Survey admits, that the impact on tax collection is very, very muted. So I don't understand, where is the government saying that it will lead to massive upswing in tax collections if its own economic advisor says that the impact on tax collections, at least for now, is going to be muted.
Sandeep, can I respond to that? Hello?
Yes, Sanju Verma, that question is for you.
Hello?
That's for you, Sanju Verma.
Okay, you know, Sandeep, I have one request. Okay, I heard that. And I hope you will not interrupt me because everybody else had pretty much a free hand in terms of the monologues that I have been listening to. First of all, let me tell you, you cannot start with the assumption that this is a debacle and a disaster. Your hashtag is that demonetization is a flop. So you seem to have made up your mind. And let me reinforce why it is a success. Before I specifically answer you, I am not running away. Has inflation come down? Yes. Has the informal economy to some extent, to a reasonably large extent, gotten merged with the formal economy? Yes. Have bond yields come down? Have lending rates come down? Yes.
Sanju Verma, you made those
Can
points.
Can I please finish? I am not done yet. Specifically,
Specifically,
let me tell you one thing which you don't seem to be pointing out. You've been quoting in the economic survey. We cannot be dismissive about the numbers put out by the Central Board of Direct Taxes. They have categorically said that out of the entire money which has come back into the system, don't forget that 7.3 lakh crore seems to be unaccounted money from bulk sources, which is under the scanner of the IT department and the enforcement directorate and the PMLA authorities. Even if 3 to 4 lakh crore of the 7.3 lakh crore unaccounted money is something that is black income, then you're basically saying that 26% of the currency that was demonetized was unaccounted for, black money, and we will nail it. So please judge the success of demonetization when you actually find out how much of the money that has come back into the banking system was unaccounted for, how much of the bulk deposits were unaccounted for. So the jury is still out on that bulk deposit of 7.3 lakh crore. So please do not mislead your audience by simply saying, oh, 99% is back, only 1%, did not come back, so demonetization is a flop. That's a very, very presumptuous argument to start with. Point number 2, you can check this. This data is out in the public domain. In the last 3 years, the Modi government has got back 1.4 lakh crore by way of black money which has come back and gotten formalized within the overall parameters of the macroeconomic system, out of which a large part is also money which was unaccounted for, thanks to indirect taxes being, not accounted for to the tune of 53,000 crores, income disclosure scheme which nailed 66,000 crore, and 25,000 crore lying in various foreign banks, including HSBC. So if you are telling me that demonetization is a flop because, black income has not been unearthed, I am giving you a number of 1.4 lakh crore. It could be a little this way or that way, but this is largely the number and I am saying it on record. Point number 2, let us not forget that there are reports that 20 to 30% of the economy is informal. I am going by various reports and coming to a number. And if you assume that the formal economy is largely taxed at 15%, what does that give you? It means that you can add 3% to the GDP over the medium term. And for Madhavan Narayanan, who said that, Lord Keynes said in the long run we are all dead. Even Manmohan Singh made this statement about Lord Keynes on the floor of the parliament. I will remind them of another statement by Lord Keynes.
Did not understand.
Thank God I'm an economist. Lord Keynes also said that demonetization is the best way of priming the economy without adding to inflationary pressures. Do not quote Keynes selectively.
Who said this? Keynes said this? Oh my God.
Apparently Churchill, may I have a small aside? Churchill said that when an economist, there are 7 economists, there are 8 opinions and 2 are from Keynes. So I have to add this. Yes, but this is all debating about an uncertain tomorrow.
Okay, we're debating on an uncertain tomorrow and I'm glad we are quoting big economists here. But I think, Sanju, To your credit, you at least can quote Keynes. I think a lot of your party men got him completely wrong. They mistook what what Manmohan Singh said in the Rajya Sabha, that in the long run we're all dead. They thought it was a very fatalist attitude. So to your credit, at least I give you the credit that you've got it right. You know the man, you know his economy, and you're quoting him right. But Salman Soz, I may agree with Sanju Verma on a lot of things. I may disagree with her, but I think she has a point there that in the long term, what demonetization has done is it has pointed the government in the right direction. At least the people who declared unaccounted for wealth or who have now come under the tax ambit. Of course, large parts of those who've now been added to the tax ambit are not taxable, are under the tax threshold or just marginally over it. But it has at least pointed the government in the right direction. We at least know where the stock of black money really was lying. Who are these people who had unaccounted for wealth that had never been declared? So in that sense, we are moving to a cleaner economy. Will you not grant the BJP that?
No, I won't, and I'll tell you why. First of all, Sanju should either believe the CBDT or her own Prime Minister, our Prime Minister, who basically said that 3 lakh crores of black money was observed after demonetization. So that is what the Prime Minister said. The CBDT said another number. And by the way, this is what the government does. They have all sorts of numbers for almost the same thing. So I think this helps them in confusing people. The other thing about 3 years of Modi government and black money being unearthed, actually the BJP Twitter handle tweeted out a figure of 74,000 CR, roughly. In the last 2 years of UPA, 132,000 CR of black money was unearthed. Okay, so you can check the data. I've tweeted about it earlier, and Sanju should check it too. I may be off on the numbers a little bit, but in the last 2 years of the UPA, we unearthed more black money than BJP did under Prime Minister Modi in his first 3 years. Okay, that's a fact. Now, we get into this long-term, medium-term, short-term debate. But what do we have in front of us? We are here, the short term. In the short term, we were sold a lot of stories. We were sold stories about black money being eviscerated. We were sold stories about counterfeit money, which, by the way, now we know it was about 0% of the total. We were told about terrorism and all this stuff. None of that has come true. By the way, Jagdish Bhagwati made the case for Prime Minister. I know he's a fan of the Prime Minister. Jagdish Bhagwati made the case that lakhs of crores of rupees would be basically extinguished from the system. And by the way, that would be a great victory for Prime Minister Modi. And of course, that has proven to be false. Now, in the short term, whatever the government said, that has proven to be false. Now, we all hope that in the medium to long term, some things will change. But let's talk about one thing that the government keeps talking about: digitalization, cashless economy. According to the data that we have less cash in the system, but that has not meant a substantial rise in the digital economy, because it is coming from a low base. And what is happening right now is people are managing with less cash. One other thing: if the whole idea was to go after black money, why do we have these 2,000 rupee notes? Right now, in your system, 2,000 rupee notes account for 50% of the value of the currency outstanding. Is this the way to go after black money? What kind of economics is this? This is voodoo economics, as Paul Krugman would say. Okay, we deserve better. The Prime Minister promised us the moon, and he's put us in some sort of a gadda. This is crazy. I mean, there was an NGO by the name of Artha Kranti or something like that. There's some run by some CA, and he went to the Prime Minister and sold him on this idea.
I will have to interrupt you there.
Salman
Soz, I will have to interrupt you there, because I cannot let Sanju and you. Salman Soz, I have to interrupt. Sanju Verma, I have to interrupt. I gave you all a free run. I gave you all a free run. I have to ask questions to my panelists. I've got a very senior member from the RBI, Mr. R. Gandhi, who's joining us on the panel this evening. Mr. Gandhi, like Supriya said as well, aside of the politics of demonetization, Mr. Gandhi, how should we judge then the success of demonetization? You're saying that it's wrong to call it a failure. It's wrong to already assume there has been a failure. Give it more time. Maithili says that. Mr. Narayanan is also sort of saying give it a slightly more longer rope. I want to ask a more specific question. What are the 3 or 4 parameters on the basis of which you will eventually, or we as people, citizens of this country, should eventually decide whether this policy was a flop or a failure? As data stands today, I think it's very clear it's a setback for the government. It's very clear that the short-term pain is significant, like Maitri pointed out. But on what grounds, on what parameters, on what yardstick should we judge it in the medium term? Mr. Gandhi.
Yeah, thank you. In the medium term, the original 3 objectives which were stated for the purpose of demonetization, where one is tackling black money, second is countering the counterfeit menace, and third is the terrorist financing. These were the 3 objectives which were mentioned in the beginning. And digitalization as a byproduct or by objective down the line. So, if you have to select a metric for each one of these, which can be done for the black money, the going forward, because that was clearly mentioned in the beginning also, that that effect will be in the medium to long term, the tax compliance will increase. So, black money is what? Unaccounted money. Because it is unaccounted, they don't pay taxes. That is a definition of a black money. So, if the money generated in the economy, if it is properly accounted, and if it because of that it adds to the tax income, then it is definitely a success. So, that metric we should be watching in the down the line in the next 2 to 5 years or whatever the definition that we have for medium to long term. We should be looking out for the tax increases and tax compliance. That is for the first one. Second is the counterfeiting. This action is against the counterfeiting menace. So, that also we should be looking out for the numbers that will be forthcoming by every year. Reserve Bank will be definitely be publishing what are the numbers relating to the counterfeit notes of the new series. If that series the numbers remain very low compared to the previous years, then again that can be judged as a success of this exercise, or if it is in the same or if it is increasing, then it can be judged as on that count it is a failure. And the third one relating to terrorist financing. So, terrorist financing, because that was intelligence reports had been mentioning that the counterfeit notes went into their hands for supporting the terrorist activities, and because of the now the new series notes have come, and it is which is very hard to counterfeit. In that case, terrorist financing will also be coming down. So, and the fourth one, that the digitalization, that if we were to look at the numbers, that again Reserve Bank will be periodically putting forth about the various types of electronic transfers, the number, volume, and both in terms of volume and the value. If that is consistently increasing and by increasing trend, then again that is a good metric to watch out for to see whether that objective has been achieved or not. This is the way I think that in the medium term we should be looking for these kind of numbers which will be forthcoming. Thank you.
All right, that's the criteria that at least professionals like Mr. Gandhi is going to judge demonetization by. A fair point indeed. We're going to take a really quick breather here. It's a riveting debate. We're covering all grounds. We're trying to keep this absolutely balanced. We'll be back in a moment. Do stay with us right here on the India development debate. The spotlight is on demonetization. With the India development debate, the spotlight is on demonetization. The jury is still out whether this has been a success or a failure. But Madhavan Narayanan right here on the show has a counter to the numbers that we've all been quoting here. Madhavan, this is all yours. Go ahead.
See, I'm not having a counter exactly, but I am glad that Sanju Verma brought up that figure of 7.3 lakh crore. I'm glad Sanju Verma mentioned the 7.3 lakh crore figure, because I thought this debate was going out of hand with too much of vague, broad, qualitative claims. The important point to remember is she's giving us a number that, on the behalf of the ruling party, that we can hold the government accountable to. I hope she has the blessings of the finance minister in saying this, because 7.3 lakh crore rupees is a huge number, and if that deposit is actually converted, as she says, to 1.4 lakh crores of revenues to the government, we would love to know over what time frame it would be happening. If it happens over the next 3 years of the government being in power, that could be a major fiscal boost for the government. And this is something we should all take note of to see if the long term that we are speaking about happens over the next 3 years, and so that we don't have to quote John Keynes and laugh about it. The important point to remember, however, is that these 7.3 lakh crores of deposits are like penalty corners in a hockey game. There is no guarantee that penalty corners get converted into goals. And if there are people, black money holders, who have lakhs of crores of rupees between them, presumably they have very smart chartered accountants and lawyers. I'm being very cynical on this, I know. I wish the government all the best. But can they convert these deposits into tax money in with a good time frame? Can the penalty corners be converted into goals? That's my big question. But the good news is that those of us who are accusing the government of shifting the goalposts finally have another real goalpost to actually look at and hold it against the words of the ruling party itself. So that is something I'm glad Sanju Verma said, and that is something we should look at. But I also want to add that if digitalization was indeed a success as it is claimed to be, the word remonetization would not have entered our lexicon. We only had demonetization in our vocabulary. Suddenly, why are we talking about remonetization? That's because the less cash movement is not as doesn't have as much traction as it is claimed to be. We will see if the jury is out on that as well. But I'm glad Mr. Gandhi brought out in a very sober manner, which in a way only a good professional can, about the various aspects we can measure the demonetization against, even in the long run. But I think we do have a target to look at. 1.4 lakh crores, we wish the government all the best.
Okay, there's a lot of cynicism and sarcasm in this debate, and I'm absolutely loving this because that is so good for a healthy debate like that. But Maithili, just to shift gears and take a cue from Mr. Madhu and what he said about digitalization, you know, it's not just him alone, but I think even the parliamentary panel has said that it cannot be a hasty, coerced thing, you know, thrust on people's necks, digitalization. It has to be organic, it has to be natural, it has to be slow. On that front, do you believe that the government has failed? And you know, you've got to give it to the government. It's a well-intended move, but I think the way they went about this is what has raised a lot of eyebrows. The fact that digitalization has not been able to replace cash, and cash continues to be still king. It's made a big comeback of sorts, even in payments. So do you believe digitalization was being almost coerced on people's necks, as the parliamentary panel seems to put it?
Supriya, you must understand that digitization is a behavioral change. Now, when you're trying to bring about a behavioral change in a population that has been heavily cash dependent, it's going to take time. You cannot expect miracles. The Anti-Dowry Act, how many years ago was it passed? Has dowry completely ceased in our country? Not at all. So whenever we're talking about behavioral change, it will take time. And the fact is that in all these kind of measures, there has to be a bit of carrot and stick. How much carrot, how much stick is a purely judgmental decision. And today the fact is that because of that push, digitization is much more than before. Has it retained that high level immediately after demonetization? No. The number of digital transactions has come down, but there has been a definite shift. The RBI annual report talks about currency in circulation being only 87% of what it was pre-demonetization. So certainly there has been a behavioral shift. And it's also important to realize that in economics, nothing is black or white. Pardon my pun in using the word, because we're talking in the context of black economy. But in economics, nothing is black or white. So you can never talk of any measure being a success or a failure. There are different shades of grey. So there are successes in different measures, there are failures in different measures. And here I find myself once again agreeing much more with Mr. Gandhi than with any of my other co-panelists, because these are things that will not deliver overnight. It is absurd, it is naive to expect them to deliver overnight. And as long as that directional change is there, I would think it's a good move. Whether the short-term pain will be proved too much, we don't know, because yes, there was a slowdown in economic activity, but was that only because of demonetization? We don't know. And this is why macroeconomics is really a bit of a huge puzzle. It's a bit like a black box. We don't know what comes in and what goes out. There was a slowdown in the global economy at the same time. So it's very difficult. It's not a one-to-one relationship. So it's important to accept that there will be successes, there will be failures, but in varying degrees. And everybody quoted Keynes and his famous thing about, in the long run we're all dead, but what everybody perhaps forgot is that his most famous student, Joan Robinson, said yes. She disagreed with her guru and she said, yes, in the long run we're all dead, but we don't all die at the same time. And that is what the crux of the matter is, that you and I may not be here, but the economy continues. And as long as the economy is pushed in the right direction through less cash, through greater transparency, through greater digitization, then in the long run maybe the country would have won, even if some individuals may have lost. And as far as the common people are concerned, whether they were right or wrong, the fact is that the common people seem to think that demonetization was a great thing. I may not think so, you may not think so, but common people seem to think, rightly or wrongly once again, that it was a great thing. So I think it's a little early in the day for us to kind of call it either a gamble, or a success or a failure. It's something that is midway, in some aspects a success, in some aspects a failure.
Okay, fair point. You've summed it up beautifully, Maithili, and I want to get closing comments. I know Sanju Verma has a point to make. So, Sanju Verma, I'm coming to you, but before that, I want to get a word in from Mr. Gandhi. And Madhavan Narayan spoke beautifully about, used a cricket analogy, and I'm going to use one. It's a slightly tricky question, and I hope you take it with a straight bat, which is that, it's widely been talked about the fact that the RBI, under the leadership of the former RBI Governor Dr. Raghuram Rajan, felt that demonetization was not worth the short-term pain and had suggested some alternate prescriptions. I don't think anyone in this panel doubts about the intent of the move and would not want those objectives to be met that were so beautifully pointed out by you yourself. Did the RBI suggest alternate routes for cleansing the economy? If so, what were they, Mr. Gandhi?
See, our RBI's role is not in our RBI's remit is not about cleansing the economy and other thing. That is firmly within the purview of the government only. Using the banking system or monetary system for the purpose of the public policy, that is where the debate will take place, or always used to take place between government and the Reserve Bank of India. During these discussions, definitely views are expressed. Initial views will be expressed, and whether it is positive, negative, merits, demerits, analysis, everything will be presented by either party, and it gets discussed. So, over the discussion, the counterpoints or counterview or how to ring fence the risk that you are putting forth, all those kinds of discussion will take place. And finally, the decision, once it is clear that this is not a remit of the Central Bank of India, Reserve Bank used to leave that decision to the government. So, Reserve Bank will express its opinion, Reserve Bank will present its analysis, its recommendations or comments, and finally, if it is an area beyond the realm of the Reserve Bank of India's remit, then it will leave it to the government to decide, and ultimately whatever the decision is taken, once the decision is taken, as a central bank, whatever needs to be done, it will be doing. That is a standard practice. That is what was followed in the case of demonetization related exercise also.
I'm glad you've cleared the air, because many in the government made it seem like as if it was an RBI decision and that, wanted to pass the buck of the decision entirely to RBI, but you've cleared the air and that helps. Sanju Verma, I am coming to you, and I'll probably have the last word, but you're going to like this question that I'm asking, which is to take off from the point that Maithili made. While we could all, debate the economic benefits of demonetization, Salman says the fact remains it was a political masterstroke, because I may have a different view, Maithili may have a different view, Madhavan Narayanan may have a different view based on economic sort of data, but the man on the street, the common man, even though he was inconvenienced, even though he had to bear the brunt of this decision, the common man clearly felt that it was a masterstroke towards cleansing the economy, taking on black money, and the election results of the UP stand testimony to that. Who would have thought that the BJP would sweep to power the way they did? Either the Congress failed miserably in exposing the pain caused by demonetization, or the people of this country genuinely felt it was a political masterstroke. So will you deny tonight that we could debate the economic pitfalls, but politically it was a masterstroke?
It was a short-term gain politically for the Prime Minister and his party. You can fool all of the people, some of the time, but you cannot fool all of the people all of the time. The fact of the matter is that most independent economists were totally shocked by this move, because this is, out of the realm of ordinary economics, okay? I refuse to accept that, you know, we don't know exactly what happens in macroeconomics. We do. What was happening in the economy in 2016 was that the economy was slowing down. You add a contractionary initiative like demonetization, it further contracts, and it did. As it would have recovered after some time, we have another contractionary impact of a very poor, very ill-planned rollout of the GST, and you'll see the consequences. I tell you, I had a debate on this, you know, with people like, you know, there were some other economists, and I told them, you will see the impact of demonetization after a few quarters, and that's what happened. I'm telling you, the GST rollout is contractionary. It will happen, and you know, I'm sorry, not in one quarter since Mr. Modi took power have we gone to 8% growth. Have we? Maybe one. Not one. Please excuse me. I'm not, Sanju, I'm not interrupting. You'll have your chance. Sanju, you will have your chance. Sanju, you will have your chance. Sanju, you will have your chance.
Sanju Verma, I'm coming to you next.
GST is
No, nobody's giving wrong information. Sanju, I'm coming to you next. Why are you interfering? Sanju, please wait. Sanju, please wait. I am coming to you next, and you can give your rebuttal then, Sanju. Please wait. I will give you your turn to speak. You will have full 1.5 minutes to talk. Salman, please quickly finish your argument.
Yeah, I'll finish. I'm just saying that the rollout of the GST, the way it's been done, the planning is, in my opinion, I have an opinion, it is not well planned, and it is going to have a contractionary impact on the, it is my opinion, from whatever I've studied, that it is going to have a contractionary impact on the economy, and you will see it. Sanju will see it. Everybody will see it.
Okay.
Now, in these 3+ years of Mr. Modi's stewardship, the economy has not touched 8% in a single quarter. Maybe one. I don't even think one quarter. And he'd been promising us 8 to 10% growth. Are Indians idiots? Are we going to be idiots forever? Is that what the calculation is? No. I think you cannot fool all of the people all of the time, and Mr. Modi will see a backlash in 2019.
I get your point.
That is my point.
Salman, right. Okay. I'm presuming the Congress party is building its election campaign on that, because if you're not, you're in for trouble. You have a series of political losses, and that string will continue if that counter narrative is not built. And if that's the counter narrative, I don't know if the Congress party really has one. But Sanju Verma, we'll let you have a quick last word, because I know the government is on a bad wicket here. Whether you like it or not, this hasn't gone down to script. So I will let you have a last word, your quick rebuttal and quick closing arguments there.
Yeah, and please don't interrupt me, Supriya, because you allowed Salman Soz a monologue. I will first take off from where Maithili finished. I think she made a very important point. Hello?
You carry on.
We can hear you, Sanju. Go ahead.
I think Maithili made a very important point. I think Maithili made a very important point about the attitudinal shift. And I think nobody seems to be taking cognizance of the fact that demonetization has led to a huge attitudinal shift, and it has instilled fear in the mind and heart of black money hoarders. And to come back to Sandeep's question a few minutes back, that is the reason you saw advanced tax collections up 42%, and individuals who filed self-assessment tax, that number is up 34%, and overall tax returns filed is up 25% vis-a-vis a routine figure of 9 to 10% in the last 4 to 5 years. So yes, demonetization is successful. Speaking of digital transactions, I will quote a small paragraph from an article in Economic Times on 27th May 2017, your sister newspaper, which says, digital transactions have trebled and quadrupled in volume and value across various modes, from wallets to cards and interbank transfers from a year earlier. It goes on to say one interesting thing: transactions digitally have trebled to 328 million against 109 million in January last year by way of volume alone. The acceptance infrastructure of the country has expanded significantly, which allowed card transactions to report the biggest growth post-demonetization. This is, I'm quoting from an article in Economic Times on 27th May 2017. So before you say demonetization is a flop and a disaster, please go back and read what your own newspaper has said. And I hope I hope you will change the hashtag. I hope you will change the hashtag.
Sanju,
Demonetization is not a flop, and Salman so says you can't fool all the people
all
all
right,
the time.
Sanju Verma.
But you are losing all the elections all the time because your only ideology is Modi bashing, which does not work anymore, Mr. Soos. Grow up and win elections at the hustings.
All right. I am afraid Sanju Verma, Salman Soos, we're running out of time here, but I do want to set the record straight, Sanju Verma. Our hashtag is DemoFiles. Hashtag is DemoFiles. We have not said demo flop. I just want to set the record straight. It's on my screen. You can see it. It's DemoFiles.
I hope you will change that.
We never changed that. It has been a hashtag since 12 o'clock in the afternoon, just to set the record straight. Completely out of time, Sanju Verma, Salman Soos, Madhavan Narayanan, Maithili Busturmat and R. Gandhi. Really appreciate you joining us in this heated political and economic debate on demonetization. The cost-benefit analysis is what we've tried to do over the last 60 minutes. You know, we can go on debating this for hours at a stretch. I'm not sure if we'll all agree on that. But the fact of the matter is that the data that's been put out by the central bank today clearly indicates that there's been short-term pain far more than what anyone, including the government, probably anticipated. Supriya.
Of course, in the long term, like may I say, and quote Keys once again, we may all be dead. But all that we hope for is we want India to rise. India will debate, India will discuss, and we will let you decide. The jury on demonetization is out. The figures are telling us one story, but perhaps the voters are telling us quite the other. Thanks very much for being a part of us right here on the India Development Debate this evening.
Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/ETNow and don't forget to click the like button. You can also follow us on Twitter at ETNowLive. To stay updated with all our programming, hit the subscribe button on our YouTube channel by logging on to youtube.com/ETNow.